real place that many people can have very wrong ideas about. It's not a fun place by any means, and if people thought about it correctly, they would more than likely do everything they can to avoid it. So for people who are curious about what kind of place hell actually is, here's everything that you need to know. Point number 1, hell currently has no people in it. Revelation chapter 20 verses 13 to 14. The sea gave up the dead who were in it, and death and Hades delivered up the dead who were in them, and they were judged, each one according to his works. Then death and Hades were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. It's important to note here that this passage occurs at the end of the age, when the world and everything in it will be put away, and then God ushers in a new heaven and a new earth that won't have any sin, pain, or death. But before God does this, he'll judge people, and death was cast into the lake of fire, and then those in Hades were cast into the lake of fire. And this lake of fire is known as Gehenna, or hell. And before the people in Hades were cast into this lake of fire, only 2 people were already there, and that's the Antichrist and the false prophet. So if the Antichrist and false prophet aren't there right now, it would mean that as of yet, this place is not habited by any people. And this raises the question, where are the people who aren't in heaven if they're not in hell? And we have the answer in point number 2. Hell is the final destination for those in Hades. Luke chapter 16 verses 22 to 24. So it was that the beggar died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried, and being in torments in Hades, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom. Then he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me and send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. In this passage, Jesus spoke of a beggar named Lazarus and a rich man. And when they died, Lazarus went to a place called Abraham's bosom, and the rich man went to a place called Hades. And it's important to note here that this passage is not a parable where Jesus tells a story that has a spiritual meaning. Rather, this passage is about Jesus giving an account of what actually happened. And the reason why we know this is because Jesus named Lazarus specifically, and this man Lazarus interacts with Abraham, who is also a real person. And from Luke chapter 16 verses 19 to 31, we learn that Hades is a place that some people go to after they die. We learn that people who are there are tormented in flames, that those who are in Hades right now cannot escape Hades, and that people who go there will have memories of their past life. So see the connection here. Jesus tells us that this rich man died and went to Hades. And then later in Revelation chapter 20, we learn that those who are in Hades are thrown into the lake of fire. So Hades is like a temporary holding cell until the final judgment, and then those who occupy Hades will go to hell. And what's interesting too is that hell may not look the same for everyone else, because according to point number 3, hell may have different degrees of punishment. Luke chapter 10 verses 10 to 14. But whatever city you enter and they do not receive you, go out into the streets and say, the very dust of your city which clings to us we wipe off against you. Nevertheless, know this, that the kingdom of God has come near you. But I say to you that it will be more tolerable in that day for Sodom